Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have a special guest. We have Andre from ProActive Astrology. Welcome, Andre.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, welcome thank you for tuning in on a Friday. It's, kind of an offbeat time, but I know a lot of you will watch this after the fact, so that's fine. I know a lot of you have been asking me how I've been doing with the wildfires here, and the one that I was most concerned about, they have under control, but there is a bigger one that's 8 miles away that is really affecting us right now. And that one they don't have under control. So I know some of you were concerned about Annie. I did talk to her vet yesterday because she has a respiratory disease. What I'm doing is, he said, the only thing I can do, which is just put the air purifier right next to her. She has her own little oxygen that I can give her. But that's really about it. So I figured, you know what? There's no sense in canceling this live. I think this is, unfortunately, I hate to use this term, but a new norm. This isn't normal for New England. We broke a record for having the warmest Halloween yesterday. It's going to be in the 70s next week. And for those of you that don't know, I live in Salem, Mass. And we had Stormy Daniels here yesterday. She right down the street from me, she was here. She received an award for woman. It was like a woman of the year, but what I didn't know is she practices witchcraft. She was trained in New Orleans. So that was a big to-do here. Lots of, helicopters and, newscasters and whatnot. So, okay. So nice comments. Maybe says, Andre, you are very popular. Yes, he is. He's everywhere.
Well, thank you. I think it's like everyone, I'm, super concerned about the election. So I've been posting more regularly. And some of it was a little strange around the growth of my channel because I did these videos in September, and I thought, they were interesting, but I was surprised by the surge and people watching and so on. And I think it's just because it's such a crazy election, to be honest. It's so crazy. We knew this going into it, but now that we've been in it, especially the last few months, it's often like completely surreal. Some of the stuff that's being said, and lots of people say, how is it possible that this complete clown, has so much support? But that's where we are. And
It's true. It makes no sense. I don't understand how, as a collective, we've ended up in this position, but you can see how the country's divided. There are certainly people who love him, they back him. They're so disillusioned. I mean, I've talked to some of them. I mean, I know people that support him. And when I start, like, one of them, I found out, she and her husband, I thought they're actually my neighbors. I thought they were living a pretty normal life, whatnot. And come to find out, they're actually flat earthers. Not just do they support him, but they're flat earthers.
oh,
Oh boy, and they're about my age. And here's the thing, like me, they're a vegetarian. They help the homeless here. Like, really good people. And yet they're flat earthers who support 45. We're living in bizarre times.
Oh my Lord! Oh my Lord! What do you do? What do I do with someone who says to me the Earth is flat? Well, what do I do? Because people always say, "Well, you got to listen to the other side." Yeah, okay, I'll listen, but come on. Honestly, I guess you just say, "Well, okay, I appreciate your opinion. Walk away." I mean, I don't know what to say.
You know what? Somebody's
It's
bringing up
nuts.
a good point. Robia, she says there's a lot of very far left New Agers that have gone full horseshoe over to 45. Yes, that's exactly what I am seeing here. Because here, like, I live in a city, in a state that's extremely progressive. People are very, very left wing, but some of them have actually kind of like bounced back around to conspiracy theories, and they're living in a whole different reality.
Right, but I mean, I thought up to now, my understanding of far left has almost always a connection to progressive energy and being kind, including people. So what are you doing going, like, how do you swing? What kind of conspiracy are you on? Because if you told me, okay, my conspiracy is that I think Dick Cheney and George W. Bush were responsible for 9/11. I think that's goofy. But, I remember meeting far left people here in Seattle saying that, and I would say to them, no, that's too far. I don't believe it. It makes no sense. But, they're really partisan. I can buy that. But where's the
Right.
logic of Donald Trump? Donald Trump is a mean spirited, creepy, dangerous, insane person who is looking for revenge and hurting people and lies around the clock. Every time he opens his mouth, he should have a nose from here to the end. Pinocchio. I mean, please, it's insane. So I don't understand that. It makes zero sense to me. How you could swing, including, some people, okay, you wonder, Carrie Lake used to be an Obama supporter.
Mm.
Elon Musk, he was an Obama supporter. You already know that you have to have something wrong with your head. When you switch from someone like Obama to Trump, that's not sane. That's not logical. If you said, I switched from Dick Cheney to Trump, maybe I could sort of buy that. This makes no sense. It makes no sense. The only thing is that astrologically it makes sense in that I have to admit we're in the very similar patterns to the Civil War in the 1860s, which is why there's a lot of division. But, normally you think if we're divided, how can one side be so completely out of whack with,
Right.
with reality? They just make stuff up. It's like the top guy is making stuff up all day long, and they also make stuff up that isn't real,
That's the thing. It's just not real. They live in a fantasy world, but yet they are our neighbors. We work with them. We grocery shop with them. Like we're sharing the same reality, but we're seeing two very different things. So
Yeah.
we're getting some questions. Oh Lord, where to begin? Um, Melissa says, "Don't try to make sense of it, Andre." I think that's probably good advice.
Well, I mean, look, in a way I just did, because in terms of making sense, that's my model. I've used it for decades, works really well, and there is an explanation. And you could even say separately, because the US, okay, so the US, great, that's why we're in it. But notice that it's a kind of a worldwide problem. Something
Yeah.
else is going on around. This is the bigger cycles of the planets that don't, they're not affecting their particular nationality. Because when I say things about the US, it's the US chart.
Mhm.
So you look at how worldwide there's this, at this time, the last 10 years, 15 years, there's been a split so that democracies are being challenged a lot more than usual. And that also will pass, though. It'll move. And in the meantime, you get a lot of irrational behavior, like what happened in Brazil.
Right.
Places like Israel are usually a lot more together, and they're very divided. In Europe, there's been a rise of, in Germany and France, of the right wing mentality. So it's kind of a worldwide disease, but these things move in cycles, and you can make sense of them in the sense that they change. That's what cycles are. They're there for a while and then they move, and they're about to. By the way, the years we're in now, it's moving, but the problem is it doesn't move fast enough for people to feel comfortable. And this, which goes to the point of this thing. People think, well, just got to elect Kamala Harris and the problem goes away. No, it doesn't. Not right away. Not right away.
No.
No.
One question I've been asked a lot, and I got a little bit of flack for this, but because I'm assuming other YouTubers must be saying the opposite of me, is that I don't see a landslide on Tuesday. I am not seeing, I know people want this huge blue wave. I think every vote is going to count. Are you seeing a landslide?
Uh, I'm more inclined, yeah, to agree with you. I hope that it's as decisive as possible.
Yeah.
But see, once again, these are the echoes. The planetary cycles have this strange way of echoing, and it's sort of the idea, that adage that goes, "History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes." And one of the things that happened in the Civil War era is extremely close elections that led to having to make compromises that the parties didn't want to make because it was really close. And, let's face it, right now, whatever polling you believe, whatever markers you believe, it seems pretty tight to me, right?
Right.
So, yes, it could happen, but I would agree with you. It's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be close. Now, the thing is, though, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, though, is someone that I heard, people are probably familiar, Mark Elias. He's a lawyer for the Democratic Party. And he says, well, there's close, capital C, and close, small c. So the idea that close means, 10,000 votes. And he was saying, you cannot turn an election like that around. If you're down 10,000 votes, forget it. You've lost.
Right.
That's what Trump tries to do. He tries to say,
Right.
well, 10,000, just find me 11,000 votes. No, not a chance. Now, if it's 100 votes, 500 votes, then it starts to get dicey, right? So in 2020, it was quite close, but 10,000 here, 50,000 there, 80,000 somewhere else. The reason it's still close is because you've got gazillions of people voting, right?
Mm.
So it could. My feeling is that it's probably going to be similar to 2020, close but no cigar kind of thing,
Right.
to the Republican Party, right? But the idea, because people will landslide. Landslide would be if we're sitting there on Tuesday night and they announce that Florida's gone blue. Well, then great, right?
Right.
If Florida goes blue, end of story. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't think so. I would be beyond amazed.
That was actually my prediction. I didn't see them going blue.
Mhm.
I think they're going to get more purple. I think a lot of states that were red are going to get more purple. And I think his comments with, with that horrible comedian that I had never heard of, making these horrible jokes. I mean, and that's not a joke. The things that he was saying was not jokes, about the Puerto Rican people and them just being garbage. And I mean, do you realize how many people we have that vote that are Puerto Rican, or they have, Puerto Rican ancestors or family members or friends? And that just didn't even make sense to me.
It's wacko. I mean, the thing about Trump that is most disturbing to a person who has any sense at all of, the imperative of electing a person who is competent. He's an incompetent idiot. The man has no idea how to manage anything, because if you're running a campaign, you got to filter that out. So they were filtering
Right.
out some of the really gross insults. They saw what this guy was going to say and they put it on the teleprompter. This tells you he's not a good manager. He's not.
Right.
Or okay, if he says, well, wasn't me. Okay, well, I thought you said you got the best people. I thought you said you got the best. Usually people have people on their campaign that would say, don't put that there. That's a bad idea because you're going to irritate people. But look what he's closing on. He's closing his statement yesterday that they should basically shoot Liz Cheney. Well,
Yes.
you know that a lot of women are voting. Don't you understand that's a stupid message? That's a great way to diminish your votes. But no, he's going in 100%. By the way, this is the gender war. Of all the wars we're seeing,
Mm.
biggest division is between men and women. And
Yes.
he's counting on all the bros showing up. But that's not a good strategy.
No. And, I have to say, for the first time, I don't know if this has been happening to you, but for the first time since I've had a YouTube channel, I am getting people coming on, making comments saying, I was a Republican, I turned a Democrat.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I've never had that happen. But now I've at least had a few dozen people saying, yeah, now I'm watching you. I've actually turned, because I can't vote for this guy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't stand for that.
100%. No, that's well, it's known in broad terms from the media. There are lots of these Republicans that have switched, the anti-Trumpers. But yeah, I mean, if someone on a more progressive channel is saying that, that's even further evidence. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time I've ever had somebody say, yeah, I've actually switched teams because I just can't abide by that. So I keep getting asked this question. I've been ducking and dodging it now, but I suppose at some point I have to answer it. I don't know if you've ever answered this. Who do you see ultimately having the most number of seats in the Congress and Senate?
That's a lot harder. And that's where that's where I'm also yet to be convinced that uh, the Senate stays Democratic. And my guess is that the presidency will probably pull the House with it
Mhm.
because that's more logical. But the Senate is looking a little grim. Now I'm hoping that, for example, in places like, well, for sure in places like Pennsylvania, I think it'll go for sure in the same direction. But if you look at, say, Ohio is more red, and you've got Sherrod Brown there. The problem is that the Democrats are trying to hang on to a whole bunch of seats, and all that has to happen is, first of all, Joe Manchin's seat is looking like it's going to go red. So
Mhm.
then there's the one in Montana that is looking pretty dicey. I'm a little more optimistic about that one now. I was more pessimistic 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think the probably the most the Democrats might do is keep it a tie, which would mean Tim Walz would be the deciding vote.
Right.
So, and that would also match if it turned out Kamala wins, the House goes Democratic, but the Senate switches. That would match the turbulent period we're in terms of the gridlock and the incredible division, because it keeps the dialogue, really divisive. I say all that, and believe me, I'm hoping very much that
Yeah.
it doesn't turn out that way. But one of the things is that I wish I had more really good data, because with astrology, when
Mm,
you're reading someone's individual chart, if an astrologer is good at what they're doing, they can still give you great advice about your life, even if you have no birth time. Just with the birthday, you can get great information. But if you tell the person, "Oh yeah, tell me something about my chart," and I'm running for president, well, that's a big, big goal. You need more information. And when it comes to the Senate, I've got only a few, like very little information. In fact, the one
yeah.
that has me most kind of wondering is that Schumer's chart is nowhere near as good as it was in 2020. Schumer's
Okay.
chart, it's okay, but
Yeah.
there are a couple of markers in there that I think, oh, I don't know if I like that too much. Whereas in 2020, I remember late in 2020 looking and go, yeah, this looks good, even though it seemed like nuts when, Trump put him in the Senate. Do you remember that? That in
Right.
Georgia, Trump started to say, the voting, you should never use, don't bother voting. It's a waste of time. So then just enough Republicans didn't vote, and the Senate went Democratic, right?
Right.
So this time around, I wish that Schumer's chart were a little better than it is, right? It's
Yeah.
barely good enough. But if it turns out, I'll be super happy,
Well,
for sure.
right. Yeah. Some things, like I always say, like there are some things I want to be wrong about.
Hmm.
Um, so when I look at the Senate, my cards have been pretty consistent. I pulled them off camera, kind of looking at this. I've been doing this for a few months now. Senate is going through like this rebirth, this reawakening, but it's full of like lies, deceit, and deception. So that's an issue. And then you get my card for the Republican Party with the magician. So, like, kind of like an abuse of power. And then we end up feeling kind of stuck and restricted. So, Senate, if I had to say today, I think it's going to be Republican.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. I'm hoping that the cards that you just drew, see, my hope would be that it somehow stays Democratic, because even if it does, here's the next problem, right? Because people assume, okay, well, let's say it stays Democratic. Let's just be really optimistic. Because, by the way, the energy is shifting. You can tell
Yes.
the latest good polls are showing her leading in the
Yeah.
battlegrounds. It's shifting,
Yeah.
so it could pull it in. It's possible. Let's be
Absolutely.
optimistic. But then you have your next problem, which is that Kamala takes charge. In order for her to do what she needs to do, she's got to blow up the filibuster, and that's a big move, because as soon as you do that, then you got to hang on for your life, because the way Republicans think these days, they're just going to take, if they ever take over, they'll blow up they'll use the same rule, and they'll put through something. So you know, that you would really dislike, right? So it's complicated by all
Yes.
kinds of you know, rules like this, and so that might be. I'm hoping that Ten of Swords is that rather than the Ten of Swords being, you know, that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
Really,
the
that's
eight of
what I'm
swords. Yeah,
hoping.
part of
Yeah,
restriction.
that would be my. Is it the 10 or the 8?
It's
What
the
did you?
eight.
Okay, well, the 8 or the 10. Yeah, the last three swords, 8, 9, and 10 are cards to be avoided.
Exact right. But then when I look at Congress, I actually feel better about that because like I actually get my Biden card, so like the Democrats. But they'll be, the Ace of Swords is the obstacle. So like there's going to be some lying and cheating. So like I'm still saying the same thing I've been saying. I don't think we're going to know when we go to bed that night. I think 45 is going to claim that he's king for the day, anyways, no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
But then I go further out and it's like, full, we're off on a new beginning. We're going on a new journey. And Ace of Wands is like a fertile new beginning. And so I think Congress is actually going to end up Democrat. That is my prediction.
So, what do you mean by Congress, though? So Congress, like both houses, or both?
Just sorry, I always do that. No, the part that is now Republican. Sorry,
The House, right?
the House. The House. Yeah. Sorry, guys. The House. Yeah, I think the House is going to.
Oh yeah, no, and the thing you just said, by the way, this is people are always, we've said this so many times. Trump is unpredictable. He's not. He's the most predictable person.
Oh yeah.
I've ever seen. He's got one way of doing things, which is basically to cheat while saying other people are cheating. He's like the I'm rubber, you're glue candidate, right? Everything is these cheaters, these dishonest people. You're looking at him, right? So he is setting it up to contest, to create chaos, to use the legal system as a cudgel. Now, the disadvantage he has is that they never have any evidence, right? I mean, he went on Joe Rogan. I was stunned. This is where you see the lack of responsibility, the irresponsible behavior by people like Joe Rogan. He asked him, he said, well, look, it's 4 years later. Where's the evidence? And Trump says, well, I'll bring it next time. He always does that, right? I'll tell you in 2 weeks.
Right.
You got evidence, good Lord, can you imagine if we were in court ourselves and you could just be convicted with no evidence? I mean, that's why we have a legal system that says, show me the papers. You don't just say,
right,
there are votes in the river. What river? What votes, right? I mean, produce this, but doesn't matter. He relies totally on the message and the fact that he can incite a mob. He's he's turned America into this, mob mentality on his side. The idea that, well, if you don't listen to us, we'll riot, we'll do violent things. The idea of creating fear, but all undergirded by a lie, a total lie, made up stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, the tell is really obvious. So it's been said now by 2 or 3 people that I've watched. Polls started to come out, and there was this thing on the ground with reporters, Pennsylvania switching, Pennsylvania now looks like a Kamala state. And immediately he started saying they're cheating in Pennsylvania because he wants to condition his people to be really upset because, come on, we were supposed to win. How can the Democrats all of a sudden win instead, right? But the whole thing is basically a con. It's what he's good at.
Yes.
That's his thing. He's not good at governing or managing or any of that. No, he's brutal. And
I agree.
Yeah.
So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Steve Bannon gets out of prison today.
No, he got out of prison already.
Was it yesterday?
Well, it was a few days ago, but I didn't realize, someone pointed it out on my channel. I had forgotten that he's back in court next month. And you know what? He's got the chart. He's got a really good chart for ending up in prison for quite a while, not just for a little bit, but for quite a while. Okay. Because now it's a state charge for what Trump had pardoned him for the federal charge of that racketeering thing that he did, where he conned all these people out of money, saying he was going to build a wall. And, a couple of those people are doing time already, 4 years, I think. He is very likely to go next, So,
right. Yeah. I really haven't watched a lot of news, which is probably for the best. I've been living here, all I do is readings all day.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like a lot of people are concerned about Bannon causing mischief and mayhem, but I think he's just going right back to prison. I don't see him being a key player anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
Those days are over.
it's such a, the this approach to governance of torching everything and just talking like fascists. I mean, you listen to this
Right.
guy, and it's the fascist playbook, and he's gotten worse too. There was a point there when he was thrown out of the White House by Trump because he was trying to be more reasonable, and you can't be reasonable with Trump. So then he threw him out. He was basically saying things that Trump didn't like about Trump. Now he's all in. But look at the way it's turning out for a lot of these people. I mean, Giuliani. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
look at this guy, right? So he, on the one hand, you think, what kind of malevolent, evil person does what he did to those women of making
Right.
up whole cloth? But hey, now he's got to give his properties and his money to them. I think that's brilliant. That's the only way you correct these people. Take all their money. In fact, I would be totally happy even if Trump doesn't go to prison. Just bankrupt this guy. Put him in a place where he's got no money, because that's what they really worship, in the end.
Oh, sure.
Money and power.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he doesn't get a big crowd, you can see like he just like melts and withers. He needs his money. He needs to be adored, and I just see that all going away.
Well, yeah, I mean, this I've said for years about how he's a fading star, conning people,
Yeah,
and his chart is signaling that way. And I've also said many times, there are plenty of readers that agree that there's some health issue there. Did you see him trying to get into that truck? That didn't look good to me.
I've been
Um,
saying this for such a long time. Yes, he has. I mean, it's obvious he has dementia, but there's also physically something wrong too. Like, and why can't we see his medical records? Kamala released hers.
of course, of course.
And why isn't it a prerequisite? Like, why don't we have? And I get like our forefathers had like a lot of good faith in people, but at the same time, times have changed. Maybe we should have some written tests, both psychological and about history, and do you know the Constitution, and health tests.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. See, but that's the thing, is what this guy has shown the U.S. democratic system is that there are too many things that are norms. They call them. It's the idea that everyone is decent enough to respect the norms. Well, then you get an indecent demagogue like this who breaks through. He doesn't have to show you the records. He doesn't have to show you any of that. It's not a rule. It's not a law. So then he does it, right? But on the other side, if you think, well, this sounds horrible, let's focus on the positive side of this, right? The positive side is that he's a racist misogynist, right? Like really, I mean, I'm talking
True.
world class on this level. And he is going to arrange for a woman to be the first president, the first woman president. And that's what he'll be remembered for. So it's pretty deeply ironic, if you ask me. And if you ever have any doubt about that statement that he's a horrible misogynist, just listen to what he said in court when he was asked about grabbing women by the pee. And he said, well, you know what? People like me, we're stars, we can do it. And the woman said, well, and he said, yeah, it's been like this for millions of years. This is just the way it is. This is the way this man thinks. And he's on camera saying this, so there's no doubt, none.
He shows you who he is. I mean, and I know when you confront one of his supporters, they say, yeah, but he didn't mean that. And it's like, well, if he never means what he says, then how can you believe anything? That makes no sense to me when they say that. Rose Blue has said his Achilles heel is just say crowd size.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, I'm sure inside he's burning that Kamala drew 75,000 to that same place where he tried to overthrow the government. He was constantly bragging. And, the remarkable thing is that, once again, you follow this guy. Now, how clueless do you have to be to not realize that he's perpetually lying to you? Like, for example, after the debate, He steps into the other room. I beat her. I beat her easily. I saw a poll 93-7, and I saw another poll 88-20. He's just pulling stuff out of where, just
Right.
putting it out there. And then he does it in rallies, and he says, in the recent rally, he told everyone that he had won Colorado twice. He lost Colorado by high single digits and then by double digits.
Mm-hmm.
Puts it out. And he was saying in the same rally, Kamala is exhausted and she has no energy, and all kinds of things that are patently untrue. Like he said, no one shows up at our rallies. Like, what am I
Oh my
looking at?
gosh.
What am I looking at? I mean, like,
Right.
I've repeated this many times. Nancy Pelosi coined it perfectly. She said, either this guy is stupid or he thinks the rest of us are stupid.
True.
Because how do you say these types of things? But there they are. They're all watching, and they're all going to vote for this thing, this
And her
person.
rallies are huge. Oh my gosh, like Madison Square Garden, Beyonce. I mean, they are impressive.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not like his.
No, not at all. No, I mean, to start saying, you really, it's really testing the normal limits to say, well, no, they're AI generated images. Another thing too, by the way, another thing that's happening, I don't know if people have noticed this, because you kind of wonder, why is this guy going to Colorado and New York and places like this? You know why? Because when he goes to do rallies in the red places, people aren't showing up in big numbers, so it's making him look bad. So then he goes to a place where it's kind of new, so he can get a bigger crowd. I mean, but that doesn't work for your electoral chances, because you're not going to win New York and you're not going to win Colorado, even though he says, I would win if Jesus were in charge. All those stories that he creates about California, if God were on my side. Come on, Donald, please.
I love it. Right? He's so delusional, and oh God, his supporters. I don't know what to say. June is asking what you're seeing with astrology for the USA as we go through 2025.
I think it's turning in the right direction, but I feel like we've got at least 2 to 4 years of, how would I say this? It's a little bit like, think of if you catch COVID, like a really bad COVID or a really bad flu, that you're recovering from. And what I remember about flus is that you feel better, but you don't feel better right away. You have to kind of, make your way back. And on a country level, a couple of years, 4 years, is really a short period. So I think you'll see the steady moving away from MAGA, but you won't see it right away. So then it makes people nervous, right? Because we're constantly inundated with, crazy messages, but it's still better than having a person like this in charge. That's the thing. So yeah,
Right.
that's a long answer to say the energy is getting better, but not completely better. There are still planets in there that need to completely move, out of the
Okay.
signs. Like Saturn and Neptune completely move out of Aries in 26, and they do a little bit of they spend some time in Aries next year and in 25, so that helps.
Mm-hmm.
But it's slow because they're slow moving, because they're way out there.
Right. I think she has the potential to be a two-term president.
Totally, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, that her chart has strong signals of that very thing, that she could. Yeah, in fact, I already have said it a couple of times. I know a couple of people that I've heard say the same thing. From the astrology, you can see it, because you can see that if you put together her regular chart and a progress chart, you see this quite a bit, that the progress chart, what it does is, because it's moving on you as you age, then the transits extend, like, so you get an extra period, extra time. And that's what happens to her in 28. It's well positioned, for that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But first we have to elect her in 24, of course.
Yes. Everybody needs to get out and vote.
Yeah.
Someone's asking you, is there a signifier for evil in charts, or is it high-low vibe of the planets?
Well, you always have to look at charts individually. The reason meaning that, yes, but the short answer is yes. Planets like Pluto, for example, Pluto is notorious for, especially men that take on you know, toxic masculinity, domination patterns. In fact, Steve Bannon is a classic example of an overloaded Pluto. So his instinct is to
Ah,
do the alpha male domination thing. They see the world through this lens that says men should be in charge, women should be subservient. Trump is that way too. But
right.
if you're not careful and you look at a man's chart and you go look at the Pluto, that Pluto could be something entirely different because these planets have ranges. So I'll give you an example. That person could be a really good psychologist or psychiatrist. They're
Mm,
working at a totally different level of Pluto where that planet is very transformative and digs deep. And what a person like that does is they dig into the mud of your psyche. They're digging into the dark places and they help you to resolve them. What people like Trump do is they just use the dark places and they embody the planet, right? So yeah, the planets like Pluto, Saturn, Mars, they often will show up most in what people would call evil, right?
yeah.
But then you can keep going. And for example, Neptune. Neptune is the most spiritual planet. It's great meditators almost always have Neptune, great spiritual masters. Problem is Neptune has a range, and then you keep descending at the very bottom, liars, gaslighters, con men. And I'm not making this up. I sometimes will see a program somewhere and they'll be talking about a liar, a counter, like someone who counterfeits money, for instance. And I'll immediately think, I'm going to go look for the Neptune. And I always find it. It's right there because
Really?
they're doing this black magic thing where they're fooling people, and then they create something. So the longer answer is to say you got to look at the chart individually and gauge what the person is doing. What are they doing with their life, right? And read it that way. So if a person is, like I remember this one counterfeiter, his father asked him, well, what do you do? Because they hadn't seen each other for many years. And the guy said, I make money.
Well, where's the lie?
I was, what do you mean you make money? I make money, right? So a person like that, you immediately realize most of this chart is going to be like, call it lower vibration. How about if we say that? Depending on your
Right.
vibration, where's your vibration? And that's something that can be very tricky to answer if you just throw a chart at someone. The
Mm,
good astrology is gauge what you're seeing in the person, past history, what they're doing now, then read it that way rather than thinking, like some people will say, well, no, no, no. If someone has a certain star here and that, then I can tell you what they're like without ever looking at them. No, I disagree. It's
right. Okay.
something you have to gauge. Yeah.
That's interesting stuff, though. I mean, there's so much to all of that. I love listening to that. Um, okay, so this is an interesting question, but a lot of people liked this. Um, so I'm not sure how you will answer this, but I mean, I know how I would. Um, they ask, how can we individually and collectively channel divine feminine energy to sweep Kamala to a landslide victory? My first thought was, divine feminine energy. That's the part of us that's nurturing, compassionate, caring. So you vote with that part of you that wants the best for others. I think from a spiritual, standpoint, maybe working with female goddesses. If you're religious, maybe like the Virgin Mary, or like spiritually, anything to do with the moon is usually the divine feminine. But I would say vote as you like how you would want your mother to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I can add anything to that, it would be that the feminine energy is actually the most natural human energy because it's the logic of when you think of divine energy is creative and receptive both, but the feeling of it is receptive. It's like you're receiving energy. And so divine energy is very calm. And to me it seems like women more than men complain. Now of course women will also tell you, so then maybe this is more than men would, because men will tend to keep it to themselves. They're not often great at communicating their feelings. But the point is that more women than men complain about anxiety. So the
Mm,
thing about this is make that an important goal in your life to say, irrespective of what's going on around me, I'm going to get better at this so that I'm not anxious for any reason, which is just get better at calming yourself, figure out ways to breathe differently, nourish yourself differently, and make it a priority rather than saying, I'm freaking out, I'm getting old. That's not good. If women are calm, and then women are naturally strong too, because women have to, they give birth, they have to raise children. So once you find your calm, you also find your strength. And if a lot of women are doing that, it will affect the entire vibe of the country for sure. For sure, because that I know that can seem a little bit new agey to say, if we've got, let's say think of 10 million women and for some reason they all become calmer, that's going to have a huge effect. But I know that it seems like a reach, right? Like, how can they be in different places, and that's where you have to realize that there's the level you're seeing and there are the levels you're not seeing, which is the country's vibe, right? But even for a person individually, it's the best thing you can do for yourself, to find a way to calm yourself. So you could call it, how do you soothe yourself? And it's a journey, it's a journey, because you're not going to get it right away. You have to practice and
sure,
and get better at it, right?
That's a good answer. I like that. Sugar Wildflower says people like 45 will never acknowledge feminine energy. He's only into shallow feminine outward beauty. And
yes, it's true. Yeah.
Right.
True. Yeah.
One of my predictions is that in the future, we are no longer going to have beauty pageants. I think, like, in terms of popularity, like, nobody's really watching them now, but I think that just whole concept of, which I know is something, 45 loves. But I think that whole concept is just falling to the wayside of the more superficial aspects of femininity.
It's true. It's true. And this is in the astrology array of planets, the planet that was discovered in 2005, Eris, which is a warrioress. But again, like all planets, it has a range, right? And that the bottom end of that range is the cutthroat competition on the feminine level, like women that are in beauty pageants, or, like, in other words, the more crass and the more shallow it is, the more you get really vicious competition over things that it's really not good to be competing that way, because you marginalize other people. Like, so if you're born beautiful physically, I mean, that's one asset, but is it really the best asset? I mean, I suppose you could argue it from a certain point of view, but it's probably not a good idea. It's probably, I mean, if you're going to have beauty pageants, for example, beauty pageants, even if you do that, they should stress equally, how smart is this person? I mean, and if you aren't, then maybe that should just disqualify you immediately.
Exactly.
Rather than giving the prize to the top, that particular level.
Right. And I think it's just like the old boys club. I just see that going. I mean, I think we're tapping more and more into the divine feminine, even though I know some days it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's in fact one of the definite astrological patterns that you see in the US and in the world, is the rising influence of women. And you can see it. It's right before your very eyes. It's not that complicated. It's happening. He already has helped many women enter politics because of his behavior.
Right. That wasn't his intention, but that is exactly. Well, just like I think, like you were saying before, it wasn't his intention to get the first female president elected, but yet here we are.
No, and the thing, I mean, one of the reasons I'm really adamant about this is it was really spooky in July how precise the timing was, where the debate that he had with Biden, he said total nonsense. If you read the transcript, it's complete garbage, but he said it with greater strength.
Yes.
And Biden was, wasn't able to deliver the message, right? Yeah. But I remember saying in a video, because I thought Biden would do better. I thought Biden would show up like State of the Union Joe, and he didn't. So I had thought he would do better in the debate than he did, no question, right? Yeah. But I had said the stuff happening around that late June when the debate happened, there were these pressures on Trump's chart that would then be magnified and picked up 3 weeks later because there were stations 3 weeks later. That's exactly what happened, but I had no idea that there was 3 weeks
Ah,
later. 3 weeks later was the Iris station. That's the where Iris. So he manifested
he
Kamala. He brought
manifested.
her in. He arranged his own destiny, right, by what he did. I don't think he was trying to do that. I think he wanted Biden to stay there so he could
Yes.
have an advantage. And immediately the mood, the situation changed. And now he's dealing with someone that he's obviously a superior product. That's why he doesn't want to debate her. He's scared out of his mind. He knows. He
Oh yeah.
knows he can't deal with her.
He doesn't make sense. He's not logical. He can't stick to a script or guidelines. I mean, he can't freestyle speech. He just can't.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's turned down so many interviews. He turned down the 60 Minutes. He turned down another. And for somebody who loves to be in front of people, you have to start questioning yourself, like, why is he turning all this stuff down? And I think his people are saying, stop. Like, you're doing more damage than good by speaking at this point. And they're trying to silence him.
Yeah. No. And I mean, the only drawback to all of this talk is that they have worked so hard for so many years. They were already doing this even before Trump. And I remember thinking, this probably isn't a good plan. They were creating silos. So they start to reject mainstream media, right? The problem with doing that is that then you create these bubbles. So now his supporters, they don't care that he didn't do 60 Minutes. They don't care that he doesn't. They don't care about anything because they're listening to the inside the bubble. And now they would say to me, you're in your own bubble too. Maybe, but like I've said to some Trump supporters, here's the problem, okay? The media that I watch, how do we know anything, by the way? How do you or me, anybody? Because we check the media.
Sure.
The problem with Trumpers is their media tells them this is going to happen. My media tells me this is going to happen. My media is more accurate.
Right.
Okay, that's it. I don't know what else to tell you. You pick your poison, but you're listening to stuff, conspiracies, things that aren't true.
Yeah.
You believe them, and then you get caught by your own, mistake. That's what Romney did in 2012. Romney was caught, was battling Obama, and I remember, first of all, they thought they were going to win. They were sure.
Yeah.
They were sure they were going to win. And I remember in a debate where he brought up something and Obama let him walk right into the trap because he had heard it on some conservative site. He wasn't checking the regular news. The thing about the regular news, you may not like the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN. They are much less likely to publish garbage because they check their sources, and they get caught very infrequently. On the right, they just make stuff up. You go in there and you read, or Facebook, people will say, I saw it on Facebook. So I saw that. How is that news?
Like Fox has registered themselves as entertainment, not as news. And, that's not me being biased. That's how they've registered their business. It's entertainment. And it's unfortunate, but here's the thing that I see, because, being like more of a new age person, what I see is, okay, they say this really strange stuff on Fox News, but then you have people on social media, because Fox News stops right before they start the really weird stuff like Hillary Clinton's a shape-shifting reptilian. But that leads to these other people that are really out there that are thinking, these aren't even real people and they're aliens. And now we've gone down this really bizarre rabbit hole, but they're the ones that's also backing 45. They're so disconnected. And I've watched some of these people, they sprinkle in enough truth and enough facts to lure you in, but it's craziness. It's madness.
It is.
Everyone they don't like is a shape-shifting reptilian. That's what I've noticed.
100%. I mean, this is again the Neptune cycle, Neptune and Pisces, which starts in 2011 and ends fully in 26, because it's a slow mover. So that planet on the plus side has really increased all the video information we can find now. It's remarkable how much it's grown. On the downside, it's the disinformation and the insanity of gaslighting and making up stuff. You just make it up. You say this is true, but it's like a magician, playing tricks with you, and you realize later, no, I was being fooled. Well, yeah, it's a little weird to see a whole sector of the country
Right.
mesmerized by stupidity. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, figure it out, man or woman. Figure it out.
It's sad. All right, we should wrap it up because I know I have to get going. Anything that you want. Oh, and I did put your link to your channel in the description box. So if you guys want to check out
No, thank
um,
you.
Andre's channel, ProActive Astrology, check that out. I know you do personal readings also.
Yeah, you can book all that if it's all there. Yeah, you can find it. Yes. Sure.
Excellent. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I'm still saying I do believe Kamala is going to win. I think every vote's going to count. I think there's going to be a bit of chaos, but I'm at peace with it. I still feel confident. But we know that the thing is, I think it was maybe shocking the first time. It's his shenanigans and whatnot. It's not going to shock me the second time when he tries to pretend that he's president or something.
Yeah, it's different. It's different now also because he being in power in the White House and controlling the institutions is far more dangerous
Yes.
because if he's there, then you saw what happened.
Yep.
And the other thing too around all these threats of violence, he's been asking his supporters to demonstrate for him multiple times, and they don't show up because their comrades, the other crazy people, they're in jail. So there's that as well. I mean, I would say to any Trump supporter, I wouldn't do that if I were you. That's just not a good idea.
No,
No,
no.
don't do anything that would put you in some kind of trouble because they're gonna and by the way, don't take your phone. Start there. Don't take your phone and film yourself and all that, which that they've learned.
Right.
But it's really hostile territory. There is law enforcement, thankfully, in this
Yeah.
country, and now we've seen the pattern, so we can anticipate it, and so lawyers anticipate, law enforcement anticipates, and it's like Kamala's right. It's an old story. This guy just won't stop. He just keeps repeating the same darn
Right.
thing every single time. So, yeah.
I agree. We'll
Yeah.
make it through this. I know people are having a lot of anxiety and stress, but you know what? We've been through this before. We can do it again. It's going to be okay. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a spa day, meditate, whatever you need to do, but we're going to be fine when everything's said and done.
Yeah, no, and you can see the markers, by the way. They're the main reason, to my understanding, why there was all this talk about how the race had shifted to him about a month ago. They did this in 22. They flood the zone with a lot of polls, so then the averages changed.
Yes.
And in 22 they were saying red wave. There was no red wave, right? So
No.
if you listen to the good analysts, they will tell you that wasn't even happening. And now, on top of that, there is data really pointing the other way. There was
Right.
a poll today, Marist poll. They're known to be rock solid, and it has her ahead in the blue wall. It's tight, but she's ahead
Right.
some. I mean, think about it. If someone says to you, you're ahead 2 points, well, that's going to mean in Pennsylvania, it could be 100,000 votes because, it's about 5 million people voting, right?
Yep.
You win by 2 points, you win by 100. Good luck turning over
Right.
100,000 votes. We're not talking about 100 votes. It's 100,000 votes.
Right.
So even though it's tight, and this does not mean, please don't ever think that I'm saying, it's done, don't vote. That's a bad idea. You should always vote and encourage other people to vote. Because why? Because common sense, but also because the bigger the margin, the better. Always.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's definitely trending in the right direction.
I agree. All right, everybody. So
All right.
have a nice weekend. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, everyone, for showing
Pleasure.
up today.
All right.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.